And welcome back in, Stripe Show Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Special one here today, Thursday. You know, we like to bring in the top instructors, and well, there's one of the top right there that's ever done it in this game. And I actually got him in between fishing trips here because he's out in my part of the country in Seattle. And I saw this post last night from him holding up this big king salmon, which I know had to be fun to reel in. And he joins me from Emerald City right now. Jim McLean, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, thanks, Travis. Yeah, I've fished out here pretty much every year I come to Seattle. I think the first time I've caught a king salmon in about 50 years. So it was fun to catch a few of them last night. And I've been out visiting my friends out here, and a lot of my old buddies, my family in Seattle. You're an Idaho guy, so you know Pacific Northwest well, and it's great to be back here. And the weather's been great right here in August. So loving it.
Yeah, it's God's country, and people are starting to figure that out now, right? They're starting to move there, particularly in northern Idaho. But that's for another day. And I know your ties in Seattle go way back, and there's a family there that the Welty family, who has been very instrumental, not only just in the Pacific Northwest, and I know your career, but just in the game of golf. Carl Welty was a man that was ahead of his time. His son, Craig Welty, is the same age as me, and we played college golf together. Craig was better player than I was. He was a cross-handed player, played for Western Washington, and I played for Lewis and Clark State College, and we always were in the same group together. And a cross-handed player, I know you know Carl, or you know Craig very, very well, and I always told Craig, I was like, look, I can watch you play cross-handed every shot you hit, but when you get in the bunker, my mind just does not compute that you're in a greenside bunker hitting it cross-handed. And every time he was in a bunker, I would turn the other way because I couldn't watch it. It was just bizarre to watch. He was a good player, and he could hit it hard too.
Well, you know, Travis, there have been some really great or very fine cross-handed players that have gotten to the tour level. Before your time, Charlie Owens was the leading money winner on the senior PGA Tour. I played with Charlie some, and it's pretty amazing that a really top teacher like Carl Welty let his son continue to play. He started cross-handed, and then Carl just kept him cross-handed. And you've played with Craig, so you know what kind of player he is. He shoots a lot of 65s. You know, he's a heck of a player. He's a head professional at Skagit Valley. I'm going up to see him next week. Wow. When I'm here, and his dad was a huge influence in my life, and you know, he did a lot of fabulous things. He was one of I think the greatest researcher of the golf swing in the world.
Yeah, well, he and Jim, educate my viewers here. You know, with Carl, he was kind of one of the first back in the day that would put the camera up, right, and video people from face on, target line, and say, hey, let's slow this down and take a look at it, right?
That's exactly right. He was a very good friend of a guy named Bill Glasson, who was a graduated #1 out of MIT, a super brilliant guy. Worked for Howard Hughes Aircraft, was involved with the space shot and stuff like that. Brilliant guy. We love golf. And he talked to Carl a lot about how to do research and how to film correctly. So Carl was always super precise on where he put the camera. Had to be just right. When we went out to film, I used to go out to La Costa every year for about 10 days or 2 weeks and stay with Carl during the tournament in San Diego Open. And, you know, we would film players. And at the end of the day, when Carl looked at the video clips we did, there would only be like 3 or 4 from the entire day that he would accept. And if you didn't know Carl, it's hard to believe that anybody could be this, you know, fanatical about doing everything right. That had to be filmed perfect. It had to be centered perfect. And the guy had to hit a good shot or we didn't keep it. Anyway, we did a lot of research together, and you know, he was just a great friend of mine. I met him in Seattle. He'd worked for Paul Runyon and in San Diego. Oh, people don't know Runyon is a major champion. And, you know, he just loved studying golf swings and trying to figure out what's going on. And then of having his own golf school at La Costa, one of the great resorts where they had the tour event, he had access to watching video. Growing up with Runyon at La Jolla, they had all those great players there that from Craig Stadler and Gene Littler, et cetera, et cetera. All those great San Diego players were just congregated around there.
Yeah, I had Derek Ueda on
Yeah.
as well, and he said a lot of very nice things about Carl as well. And I'm curious, Jim, you look at today's game. You've been doing this a long time at a very high level. Everything is at your fingertips now in technology. It's not just 2D video; it's 3D. It's force plates. It's you name it. It's out there now with putting, Sam Putt Lab, TrackMan. What's your take now on today's instruction? I mean, how do you view it today with all of this available to you? Because you train a lot of young teachers. I'm just curious in your thoughts on the landscape of coaching today in the game of golf.
I think the teaching, Travis, has gotten a lot better. It continues to improve. There are so many great things that we have at our fingertips, as you mentioned. However, if all it was is reading off numbers and telling people, this is your angle of attack and this is your path, and that's what would make them a great player, then everybody would be a great teacher and we'd have all great players. But as you know, Travis, there's way more to the game, from the mental aspects, the management aspects, to how to feel shots, how to hit shots under pressure, how to control your brain. I mean, as a teacher now, I think we have to be, we have to be able to be psychologists as well as golf teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer there. I mean, you got to be around it. I think coaching is more applicable today than probably the instructor word when I got into the business 22 years ago. And I have a lot of young teachers that'll ask me, getting in, what would you do? And I think, yeah, you got to learn all this information. It's important, go through it. Don't get overwhelmed. But you also got to establish your voice and your message, and you got to get in there and start moving people too. Like at some point you got to teach and you got to move and you got to trial and error and learn from those things. So it's a much more of a balance, I think, today. And we could certainly talk about that for a long time on this podcast, but I want to get to a couple of your players. One of them is Russell Henley, Jim. And, really Russell is a guy that I follow closely. I enjoy watching him play. He's a fiery guy. He looks like he's got a little bulldog in him when he's out there and he's competing. People don't realize, though, with Russell, like when you go into the strokes gain approach category and you start thinking about excellent iron players, you think of Morikawa, you think of Justin Thomas, Spieth is back now in that category. The last 50 rounds going into this week, Russell Henley's in the top 10. I mean, this is one of the best iron players in today's game. He started working with you in March. He's had great strides. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you've done with him to kind of help keep the ball in front of him and hit it tight over and over again?
Well, Travis, there's different types of teaching, developmental teaching, and then helping somebody at different stages. When I worked with Russell this year, I just really got to know him in March, and we did spend quite a bit of time together, but he's already a great player. So I don't want to take too much credit for what he's doing. I think we did some really good things, especially with his driving. He is a tremendous iron player. Mm-hmm. He's a very good athlete. I mean, a really good athlete. He's super coordinated. He plays the guitar great. And he's got a lot of diversity in his life. He's got a young family. When I started working with him, he has big goals still. He's only 31 years old, but he's accomplished a lot. He was the number one college player. He played on the Walker Cup team. He's made a ton of money playing golf. He just got a little rut, this past year where he wasn't happy with what he was doing. So I think he enjoyed where we went through a lot of ideas and thoughts on the game and how to approach shots, how to visualize shots, particularly with the driver is the number one thing we started with. But then, it delved into chipping and putting and, how he's looking and setting up his goals for the year. He's had very close to having a monster year this year, where he's, had leads and
Yep.
the U.S. Open and at Hartford. He just had the lead with 4 holes to go, and he was lead. He shot 62, 64 last week at Greensboro, and had a 4-shot lead going in the last round. Ended up missing by 1, where he, those could have gone the other way, but
Yeah.
it's tough. It isn't easy to win those guys out there.
Was it? I heard him talk about, he was struggling with the left miss. Was that accurate? Where he was kind of overcooking it left. Better players, they can start hitting it left, and all of a sudden that is not a good thing. Did you kind of clean up that left miss a little bit with some stuff?
Yeah, that was the first thing we did. When I looked at his swing, and we texted back and forth before we got together at the Honda.
Mm-hmm.
So at the Honda, I met him on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we did some work away from the Honda until Wednesday, I guess. But he was, it was a kind of the typical good player miss. He dropping under it a little bit. He's a little saggy on his right side, and he still dropped under it a little bit, and was hitting it on the toe, just slightly on the toe. But it doesn't take much. I also didn't like his driver. I didn't like the numbers on the TrackMan, which he didn't pay attention to. As a lot of these great players aren't quite as detailed as people think.
Right.
Bryson DeChambeau is. Other people are really huge on the numbers, but some of these guys are much more field players. So he was wanting me to give him some feels and get him some ideas, give him some things to work on. And I thought his driver was, not the perfect fit for him. And I said, let's get on the phone, call the reps, get him some drivers down. He said, well, do you think I really should do that? I said, yeah, absolutely. They'll have them for you. And just let's test some drivers out. And that helped him a lot. The guys at Titleist did a great job. Sent him a couple good drivers, and it made a big difference for him. And he started hitting the ball right out of the dead center of the club face.
Oh wow!
For me, is fundamental number 1.
Oh yeah. Well, that toe shot is, they certainly don't want to see that. And he's playing good again here. He's 1 under through 14 currently right now as we do this at Liberty, which is playing tough. It's playing tough right now. 1 under. The morning wave puts you inside the top 13, which you very seldom see with that many guys out on the course. So with Russell, let me ask you this, because you mentioned the close calls. Hartford, he made a couple doubles coming in. Last week he he bogeyed 4 of the last 8. He even admitted, like, the transparency I love. He even admitted, like, he was a little nervous on Saturday, and do you think Russell perhaps is changing a little bit because he's playing so well that all of a sudden, like, there he is, he could win this thing, and he's been there 2 or 3 times now, like you said, could have been a monster year. Is that something that you guys talk about, where he admits, maybe, gosh, I am kind of a little nervous? What approach should I take to maybe help me in those situations moving forward? Is that something you guys talk about?
Yeah. I send him little things from other athletes and what they do under pressure. And, he needs to just break through again here and close the deal. Mm-hmm. He really had a good chance at Hartford because he had a couple pretty easy holes there in 15 and 16 that he made 2 doubles on. I think the odds of him making 2 doubles were about 100,000 to 1 that would happen, but it did, and Travis, we both know things happen, and then you got to regroup, but it just happened at the end of the tournament. I think leading the U.S. Open for 3 rounds was, anybody that's played golf knows how tough it is to go wire to wire, especially in your country's U.S. Open. I played with McElroy the last round. If you just get a couple things to go right, you win or finish second. But he just couple things happen right at the end. I think he could win this week, though. No doubt about it. He's a great player. I love the way he hits the golf ball, and he hits the most beautiful iron shots, as you mentioned. He's just a tremendous, beautiful. He just takes almost no divot, just clips the ball off there, and the ball just doesn't move. It's really awesome.
Yeah, they don't. Most of these guys don't move it, do they, Jim? It's pretty.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty straight. I mean, it may die one way or the other, but there's a few that'll sling it, and those things. But for the most part, like I tell, you're telling it's just kind of here. Like you don't need to do all that if you don't want to. A 10 handicap, 12 handicap. Let's just get it in tighter, right? With the dispersion, and that's going to help you out. Yeah, it's interesting. I do like watching him play. It's very, like I said, there's a little edge to it. Like there's a purpose in the way he's walking and his routine and a commitment. And I just, I gravitate to that. And when you think of the best iron players and the best ball strikers on tour, you probably have to wait a while until people mention Russell Henley. But the reality is he's right there. I mean, he's, his strokes gain approach this season is right there. So he played at University of Georgia, of course, was a good collegiate player. And so many of these guys were good junior players. I know you work with a lot of juniors.
Yeah.
I'm curious, the junior golfer today, Jim, how are they different, say, than they were 20 years ago?
Well, I think the equipment's so much better for the kids. They're fitted with good clubs. I've got two young boys I work with quite a bit down in Florida down at the Biltmore for the last 3 years. One's Victor and one's Axel Amonso. And they both won their world titles at their age groups. Mm-hmm. And I still try to teach them a really good golf swing, but they hit it hard. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot different. They develop younger. It's a sport where you could take an 8 or 9 year old girl and she could hit 50 drivers in a row right out of the center of the club face, right down the middle of the fairway with a draw. And you ask them, what are they thinking about? And they say nothing, and that's a fantastic answer. It's a mind-blowing answer for most amateurs to hear that. They don't almost want to hear that, mm-hmm. But they get that they're young and they have a swing. So that when you just let the golf club swing freely with no tension in your body, the ball goes really good. Mostly you hit it in the center of the face. If you're obviously these are coordinated, talented young kids, but it is amazing how simple golf can be. And on the other hand, how unbelievably complicated golf can be.
You worked with Lexi Thompson when she was little. I would imagine watching her, and Curtis, by the way, is on the podcast tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Who just got his in the top 25.
Yeah.
From the Corn Ferry Tour. So we're excited about Curtis Thompson coming on tomorrow. Lexi trying to keep up with these brothers when she was young, both feet up off the ground, catching it right out of the center of the face. As a teacher, looking at that going, how in the world? This is unbelievable. But yet as a coach, like this need, well, do I want to go in there and keep the feet more planted? Do I want to get it because aesthetically it should look like that's a balance, right? As a coach that you have to take on, where you just want this natural ability to flow, but then have moments to step in and maybe just layer in small things at the right time. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, I think we go back to Carl Welty and all the studies that Carl did, all the film he had, and all the stuff that he just had, all the players, we'd look at him nonstop. So I knew that Bobby Jones came up off his left heel going through. I saw Johnny Miller's left foot moving all over the place. And and then also playing a lot with a lot of great players myself. And I just have seen a lot of guys and girls with some odd moves. So you can go to Trevino or Arnold Palmer, mm-hmm. whatever, Johnny, that just had some different stuff, but they hit the ball great. So it really comes down to Travis as a teacher, to me, is what is the ball doing? Now, if somebody can hit the ball great, like Lexi Thompson, I never changed her left foot, and I got criticized early on for it mm-hmm. when people started noticing when she was playing tour events when she was 14. They said, and some teachers came up to her dad and said she'll never be a good player doing that. But I always said, no, we're not going to change that. That's how she's getting a lot of leverage in her swing. Like you said, trying to keep up with Curtis.
Yep.
When she was young, I mean, she's trying to keep up. She's playing the back tees with her brothers when she was 12 and swinging as hard as she could. But awesome. I think she's the best female driver. You know, maybe Annika Sorenstam I've seen, Lorena Ochoa, but
Yeah.
for driving it long and straight, Lexi's as good as it's ever been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always had an appreciation watching players and teachers, that, you know, like you have a number of players that they all look different. You know, there's no cookie cutter way. I think it's pretty easy in the modern game, especially with social media. You see the cookie cutter, I guess, perfect swing. It's impressive. But if that's the only swing that's in your arsenal and in your players, to me, like, it's almost like there's a little bit of coaching the DNA to some degree out of a player. Right. Because they're all unique. And to me, Lexi, like the feet and those things, that's Lexi, right? Annika and her head swiveling, that's Annika. And there's just these little DNA things that, man, you got to be careful with, you know, if you're trying to just mold them into this one pattern, because that's what the science says, or that's what TrackMan says, or that's what, you know. So I think there's a balance there. And I love watching, like, the players that you've coached over the years and others. You can just see this wide range of techniques that you're coaching and just trying to maximize. And imagine with Russell, it's kind of like that. Like you said, it's concepts, things to work on that don't take away from the genius that is Russell Henley, right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think Tiger has mentioned the two most talented players that impressed him the most in his career were John Daly and Bubba Watson.
Yeah.
And then Mickelson would probably be up there too. And they both, all three of those guys are got the club pointed at the ground at the top of their backswing. And you'd say, well, wait a minute, you can't control the ball doing that. But they did. And now, and Bubba moving the ball with big curves, you just don't see that much. But would you take that away from Bubba Watson?
No.
And, what would be the upside of saying, Bubba, I don't want you to hit that big slice anymore. Just hit the big hook, or vice versa. Or just hit it straight. And I don't think Bubba could play golf doing that. I don't think he could. I don't think he could exist on playing like that.
All right, let me ask you about the Ryder Cup here, because I know you got a lot of things to do up there. You're on vacation. You shouldn't be. I've got you talking about the golf swing on your vacation, for crying out loud. So we got the USA. It's coming up into September, the Ryder Cup. The guys that are in: Jim Morikawa, DJ, Bryson, Koepka, Justin Thomas, Xander. Now we get into the picks, right? 6 picks, and Spieth is at 7. I think we probably could agree Spieth is going to be on the team at this point, the way that he plays or has been playing. I personally feel Reed will be as well. I think it's a lock. Do you feel that way, or do you think he actually withdrew again this week?
I think Reed's a lock, actually.
You do or don't?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
I don't think Reed's a lock. I think the controversy's there. You think about the locker room, but I could certainly be wrong. I mean, he's a great player and just represented America in the Olympics. He did a great job there. But he's right there. You and I, we just talked a little bit before this podcast of maybe there's 15 guys you could pick really that would be great. From Tony Finau to Phil Mickelson, who's out of that very top echelon, but winning the PGA, all his experience in the past Ryder Cups, his super competitive attitude. And, I was with Keegan Bradley in Chicago when they paired Mickelson with him in the practice rounds and then in the event. And that's the best I ever saw Keegan play. And he gets guys pumped up. Now, what do you think? You think he's going to pick? Mickelson's not in there, but he won a major this year.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think he's going to pick him. I'm not sure I would pick him, but I think he will pick him. Yeah. I think Mickelson is probably going to be picked. I think the name that is going to be interesting, that's going to really throw a wrench in thing, is if Scottie Scheffler wins one of these 3 tournaments coming up. And he's off to a really good start here today. And Scheffler played great the end of year last year. If he wins, now we've got ourselves really something to be thinking about with a lot of different players. I think Harris English is in. He's won twice. He's currently Jordan's 7, Harris is 8.
Yeah.
And Patrick Reed is 9.
Yeah.
I think all 3 of those guys will be in. That's just my gut. I do think he'll pick Mickelson. And then it's down to two others. So you start thinking about Daniel Berger, Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau. Webb Simpson finally looks healthy again.
Yeah.
Kokrak's won twice. Horschel, Burns, and then there's Kisner at 18, which everybody's seems to be on the Kisner bandwagon because he can putt. He's a bulldog. He had a good President's Cup record. Would you err on the side of maybe we need length and someone who can get it out there long and straight off the tee like a Scheffler versus a putter, a great putter like Kevin Kisner? Which way would you go with Whistling Straits? Because I know you've been there.
Yeah, I think Whistling Straits plays really long. The weather in the end of September can be cold.
Yeah,
been up there a couple times when it's been cold, and you see the guys that have played great there at Whistling Straits have been long hitters. As we know, Kisner is not short. I mean, he gets it out there good enough, and Finau's maybe not the greatest putter in the world, but I mean, what a phenomenal talent Finau is. I think a lot of guys would love playing with Tony. I think Scheffler is playing great. Cantlay kills it. I mean, he hits it a long ways, and he's a great putter. It's just such a tough pick. I think it's not good that he has 6 picks. I wish he had 4 picks. 6 is too much. I mean, there's going to be 4 or 5 guys who you could have picked, that are not going to get picked, and it's going to be because it looks like it's really bunched up. And I think going here to these last playoff events, things can change.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that might make his decision a little bit easier. I mean, if Cantlay say wins one of these, like that makes his decision, I think, pretty easy with Cantlay. I think Berger's interesting. He won early in the year. I think if he won, he probably makes it in. I think if Daniel Berger, Cantlay win, those two are in. I think you can't not pick them.
And I think it's nice to get some younger guys, rookies in there. Burns, like you said, and Scheffler. I think that's really great.
Yeah.
I think
I like Burns.
Energy in there.
I've been criticized as a Burns homer. Probably because I've been so far out in front with him from LSU. I just think he's long. He hits fairways. He's a really good iron player, and he's a great putter. It's like, sign me up for all that. His short game can get a little clunky, but if you're long and accurate and you're a great iron player, that transfers everywhere. Now, even if you're just an inconsistent putter, I think I would still bake it, but Burns is a great putter. See, I would love to see Burns and Scheffler on the team. That's just me. I'd love to see those two figure out how to get on the team, but we'll have to wait and see because we got to play the playoffs.
We've still got the Koepka Bryson DeChambeau deal going, which is things very interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of ran its course for me.
Who's going to play with Bryson?
Got some work to do there. I think it's easy to say I won't be an issue, but I think it is an issue. And I think those things are a problem. Clearly, there's a lot of beef there, especially with Brooks towards Bryson. So I think they're going to have to get out way ahead of that. But it'll be interesting to see how the team can come together. We know Whistling's long. We know there's not going to be a lot of rough. They're going to let these guys. The USA send it, right? Yeah, they're going to let them send it. And if you hit it 30 yards over there, we'll go cut those trees down if we need to as well. I mean, they want them to send it and play the power game. And I think you got to set your team up like that. And for me, Scheffler and Burns fit that mold perfectly. So anyway, we'll see. Jim, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it. Tell Craig hello for me. I'm sure he'll remember we played a lot of golf when we were in college. And, have fun in Seattle. It's one of my favorite places. I'll be there in a few weeks to watch the opening game, the Seahawks and the Titans.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah. I'll be on my way back to Miami, but it's been nice being on with you, Travis. Thanks for having me, and good luck to you. I'll see you, I'm sure, this winter somewhere.
Hey, you bet. Yep. Come on down here to Florida. It's, it's 100 degrees. Feels like 100, about ready to chance of rain. You know that story.
I got it. Yeah.
See you, Jeff.